Hello, everyone. So today we're going to be presenting The Frog versus the Rat by Jennifer, Isabella Christian, and Alyssa. So to start, we're going to go over the rat's taxonomic names. Um, so for the kingdom, it's going to be Animalia. Phylum is Chordata. Class is Mammal. Order is Rodentia. Family is Muridae. Genus is Rattus, and then the species is Rattus norvegicus. So, when speaking on the rat's ecological background, the biotic factors include predators like animals like cats, birds of prey, and snakes. Their source of food. So, rats are omnivores, which means they eat a mixture of fruits, vegetables, and as well as meats. And then another thing is rats do bring disease and they can transmit disease to other rats and even humans. So, an example of that is salmonella. And then when speaking about the abiotic factors, the temperature of air. So rats are warm-blooded and they prefer to be in warmer temperatures, especially when they're nesting. And then sunlight, rats prefer the darkness actually, because they are more active at night, and that also plays in with nesting as well. And then water, it's very vital. They need a close source of water to survive, and they consume a pretty large amount of water for their body weight. And then the food chain and ecosystem. So rats are pretty low on the food chain, as you could see that they're just right above bugs and stuff, but they're about on the same area as frogs. So as you could see, who preys on them is birds of prey like hawks or anything like that, and then as well as snakes.
So for the mating patterns and behavior, 500 female rats basically can mate up to 500 times in a 1 year, which is basically 2,000 babies during 1 year. Rats usually hit sexual maturity at around 3 to 4 months. So sexual maturity in this case is basically rats can reproduce up to when they're around 3 to 4 months. So the behavior of when females are trying to mate or get their partner's attention, females typically spin around with stiff legs and lift their head until and basically vibrate their ears to let the males understand that they're trying to mate. And if the male does end up liking that female rat, he ends up like licking her. So for the digestive system, it's pretty straightforward. There's a large intestines. There's arrows pointing to these organs, which is there's a large intestines, the stomach, the liver. The spleen is basically what fights germs in the blood, the mouth, and then the small intestines. So the excretory and reproductive system, there's a kidney, which gets rid of waste and toxic substances, the testes, and the penis, which is how we found out that it was a male. So the respiratory system is the larynx, the trachea, and the lungs. So the larynx are the air passage to the lungs. The trachea transports air to and from the lungs, and basically the lungs removes the oxygen and passes through the rat's bloodstreams. Now the circulatory system, there is a circle which is pointing to the vessels, and you can see the arrow also pointing at a specific blood vessel, which these blood vessels deliver blood to the organs and tissues to the rat's body.
So, when speaking about the rat's nervous system, it's divided into two parts, which includes the central nervous system, also known as the CNS, and then the peripheral nervous system, also known as the PNS. So, the central nervous system consists of the brain, which I have a picture shown of the dorsal view of the rat's brain here, as well as the spinal cord. So, we didn't really get to uh, dissect the rat's brain, so that's why I have a picture shown here. And then the peripheral nervous system is composed of all the nerves outside of this central system. So that just includes like spinal nerves and cranial nerves. So anything surrounding the brain, all the nerves surrounding the brain, as well as all the nerves surrounding the spinal cord shown here, are a part of the peripheral nervous system. So then nervous system continued. We have the muscles shown here. This is a pretty in-depth picture of the muscles. But just to go over a quick overview, so the muscles are attached to the bones of the rat by the connective tissue called tendons. Um, and those adhere to the basically the spines and the ridges on the bones. It's easier sometimes to identify the rat's muscles by where they're attached to on the bone. So the end that is attached to the bone on the rat that does not move during a contraction is called the origin. So the end of the muscle that attaches to the bone that does move, unlike the origin, is the insertion. So the movement caused by the contraction of the muscle is called an action. And then also muscles can easily be identified from one another by their shape and then the way that they overlap each other.
Hi guys, my name is Alyssa Busio.
My name is Christian, and we did the frog dissection. For background information, the kingdom is Animalia, the phylum is Chordata, the class is Amphibia, the order is Anura, the family is Dendrobatidae, the genus is Dendrobates, and the species is Dendrobates azuris. Some more background information include the ecological habitat. So the environment is, there's a variety of frogs, meaning the habitats will be diverse as well. But it can be stated that in general, frogs need a wet environment as well as land. They are amphibians after all. Amphibian meaning that the animal lives in terrestrial, land, and aquatic habitats. So the abiotic factors include land, water, and sun, and frogs spend most of their time on land and water, and the sun impacts the frog's temperature. So for biotic factors, this includes predators, food sources, and plant matter. And the predators can be anything from snakes, which is the main predator, and also winged animals such as like geese and stuff like that. And the prey can be small insects such as flies and other smallish insects. And the other biotic factor can be plants. So when looking at the mating patterns, in general, the male frog gets on top of the female frog sets down the eggs. But one thing to know is that the placement of eggs varies from frog to frog. And finally, the male frog fertilizes the eggs. And frogs can lay eggs up to twice a year and is usually per season. And these eggs can range from 2,000 to 6,000 eggs. And right here shows 3 images going from eggs, tadpoles to froglets.
So the food web consists of the frog, of course, and then the frog are considered secondary consumers, and they act both as predator and prey. They eat insects such as flies, slugs, worms, anything that's insects, of course, and tadpoles feed off of algae. But the frog will get eaten by mostly winged animals, so like geese, swans, hawks, anything that can fly, basically.
For the digestive system of the frog anatomy, the food or anything that it eats enters through the mouth, down the stomach, or down the esophagus into the stomach and into the small intestine and large intestine and out the cloaca. And it's during its journey, it also gets processed through the liver and the gallbladder.
The frog excretory and reproductive system consists of the cloaca and the kidneys and the ovaries. Here, as you can see, we did have a female frog, so the ovaries are going to be right here at the arrow it's shown. But in a male frog, there would be testes right there.
Okay, when looking at the respiratory system, we need to take note that frogs are amphibians, which means that they both live in land and on water. So of course, it's going to have 2 main methods of breathing, and one of them is through the lungs and another one is through the skin of the frog.
The circulatory system of the heart consists of the heart and blood vessels. The heart pumps blood throughout the body and all circulatory systems. And in this diagram here, you can see that the blood, which is that has oxygen that's poor, it enters through the right atrium, then goes all the way to the pulmonary veins, which the lungs are left at the left atrium. And then it has a mixture of oxygen rich and poor and it goes through the ventricle. And then the last one is going to be that the ventricle pumps blood to oxygens to the tissues of the body, and this keeps the frog in a steady pace with the heart rate.
So when looking at the nervous system, basically the spinal cord is the main thing that allows the frog to move. So it receives signals from the brain and it's transmitted, thus conducting to movement. So you can see here, it has the brain and the spinal cord all the way at the back, as well as the spinal nerves. So now we reach the general comparison between the frog and the rat. Some common structures that both of them have is a closed circulatory system, and both of them have 4 limbs. When looking at the unique features, rats have 4 heart chambers. They're considered mammals. They use the amniotic egg, and rats are warm-blooded. For frogs, they have 3 heart chambers. They're considered amphibians. They use amphibian eggs, and they are cold-blooded.
So for the phylogenetic tree, the recent ancestors for the frog would be the Ichthyostega, as you can see here, the frog, and then it goes all the way down to the rat. The recent common ancestor is a tetrapod, and it has 4 limbs, or it's a 4-limbed animal, and it's considered to be the first 4-legged fish, and it possesses lungs to inhale oxygen and stay in the water. So it's much like the frog, because the frog has the lungs to breathe when it's not in the water, and then when it's in the water, of course, it's going to breathe through its skin. And then the second part of this would be that it lacks skills. It has strong ribs to protect its lungs, and then they do have legs. They don't have fins or anything like that. And the Ichthyostega lived both on land and water, which is an early sign of amphibians. And then life on land is equal to animals evolving to live on land, and life began to flourish on land.
And that concludes our presentation. Here are all our references on this page, and thank you guys for watching.